The game is done for. I'm not playing. This man just committed career suicide, and the entire hip-hop world is watching it happen in real time. We're talking about five different Kendrick Lamar disses on his new mixtape. And listen, this isn't just regular beef. This is a West Coast legend embarrassing himself so badly that people from his own coast are turning their backs on him. The disrespect is insane. The timing is terrible. And honestly, this might be the saddest downfall we've seen in hip-hop this year. And I'm breaking down every single bar, every reference, and exactly why this is about to backfire in the worst way possible. Now, everybody thought they understood where the game stood with Kendrick Lamar, right? We all saw him at that torch-passing moment back in the day. We watched him play a role in West Coast hip-hop history. That was the story. The veteran passing the crown to the new king. Respectful, historical, beautiful even. But this new mixtape? It just flipped that entire narrative on its head. December 5th, the game dropped a project. And instead of celebrating his legacy, instead of showing maturity, instead of acknowledging that Kendrick Lamar is literally at the peak of his powers right now, pause for effect, this man decided to challenge him, not once, not twice, but on 5 different tracks. And the wildest part? The charts are already showing nobody's really checking for this project like that. But the disses? Oh, those are spreading. And they're spreading for all the wrong reasons. Because what we're witnessing here isn't a competitive challenge from a worthy opponent. What we're seeing is jealousy, bitterness, and a desperate grab for relevance that's only making the game look worse. And I'm breaking down every single bar, every reference, and exactly why this is about to backfire in the worst way possible. Now, everybody thought they understood where the game stood with Kendrick Lamar, right? We all saw him at that torch-passing moment back in the day. We watched him play a role in West Coast hip-hop history. That was the story. The veteran passing the crown to the new king. Respectful, historical, beautiful even. But this new mixtape? It just flipped that entire narrative on its head. December 5th, the game dropped a project. And instead of celebrating his legacy, instead of showing maturity, instead of acknowledging that Kendrick Lamar is literally at the peak of his powers right now, pause for effect, this man decided to challenge him, not once, not twice, but on 5 different tracks. And the wildest part? The charts are already showing nobody's really checking for this project like that. But the disses, those are spreading. And they're spreading for all the wrong reasons. Because what we're witnessing here isn't a competitive challenge from a worthy opponent. What we're seeing is jealousy, bitterness, and a desperate grab for relevance that's only making the game look worse. Now, let me walk you through exactly what happened on this mixtape. Because if you haven't listened, and let's be real, most people haven't, you need to hear what this man actually said. Track 2, Caviar and Cartier. The second track on this thing is called Caviar and Cartier, and literally within the second bar, the game is already taking shots. He starts off talking about Max being free, then immediately pivots to this. Standing next to Dot when the concert stopped. Like me standing next to Pac. That's too many name drops. Now hold on, let's break this down. The game never stood next to Tupac. Not really. There's some old fabricated pictures, some Photoshop nonsense from years ago, but he's trying to make it seem like his presence next to Kendrick Lamar at that torch-passing moment was the same as standing with Pac. But here's where it gets interesting. He says, when the concert stopped. Now, is he talking about the Bob Out? Because if he is, the game wasn't there. He didn't stand next to Kendrick at the biggest West Coast celebration we've seen in years. So what is he really saying? Is this jealousy? Is this him rewriting history? Either way, it's already messy. But listen, if that was the only mention, we wouldn't even be talking about this. That could have been a reach, but it gets so much worse. Track 3, Can I? And honestly, it's frustrating because the production is actually fire. The beat is amazing, the hook is catchy, and it shows that when the game wants to rap, he can still rap. But the content, the respect, that's where he loses everybody. After asking if his album can win a Grammy, remember that, it's important later, he says, "Can I? Cheer for Dot, 'cause I knew one day he'd be great." No pause. Let that sink in. On the surface, you might think that's positive. You might think he's showing love. But notice the tense. I knew one day he'd be great. Past tense. Not he is great. Not he is the greatest right now. It's this passive-aggressive way of diminishing what Kendrick is doing in the present, while trying to take credit for predicting his success in the past. And then immediately after he says, "Keep it 100, tell y'all I still love Drake." Bro, what? This is the same Drake who worked against your own coast. The same Drake who had people on the ground in Compton trying to dig up dirt, getting murals vandalized, disrespecting the culture. And the game is out here saying he still loves him? And look, Kendrick is the king of the West Coast right now. That's not debatable. That's not up for discussion. The culture has decided. The music has spoken. The respect is there. So for the game to stand here and act like he can just reclaim that title after years of being a walking meme? Brother, that's not how this works. And here's the thing. Kendrick loves hip-hop. He's a student of the game. He respects the culture. But he's also not going to let disrespect slide, especially not from someone on his own coast. So yeah, the game might get a response. Maybe not a full diss track, but a bar on a feature, a line on a surprise drop? Oh, it's coming. Track 5, America's Nightmare. Now, if Chrome Hearts was the challenge, America's Nightmare is where the game really crosses the line. Because this is where he stops just calling Kendrick out and starts using Drake's talking points. Like, word for word, the same conspiracy theories that the OVO fan base has been pushing for months. What's a Grammy to someone who out here spinning jets? What's an internet troll to someone who grew up without the internet, but I will log you off it. Keep sending threats, put 12 dots on you, and park you like that GNX. Okay, let's unpack this mess. First, he name drops GNX directly. Kendrick's car, Kendrick's album. He's making sure we know who he's talking about now. No more subtlety. Second, he's downplaying the Grammy. The same Grammy he said he wanted just 2 tracks ago. So which is it, game? Do awards matter or not? You can't contradict yourself in the same project and expect people to take you seriously. And third, this is the big one, he's talking about spinning jets and questioning what a Grammy means compared to that. Now, who we know that's always bragging about private jets, who's always posting about material wealth to distract from musical relevance. The game is literally using Drake's talking points. He's using the same deflection tactics, and then later in the track, he goes even further. He talks about fake followers, fake streams, fake buzz, fake beef on podcasts. These are the exact conspiracy theories that Drake fans have been pushing since they lost the battle. The idea that Kendrick's success isn't real, that the streams are inflated, that the cultural impact is manufactured. It's all lies, and it's all been debunked, but here's the game, repeating it like it's facts. When you reference DOT and GNX and then immediately start talking about fake streams and industry manipulation in the same verse, you're picking a side. And the game picked Drake's side over his own coast. That's not just disloyal, that's career suicide. Now, everything I just told you, that was building to this, because out of all 5 tracks where the game mentions or disses Kendrick Lamar, there's one that stands above the rest in terms of pure disrespect, and that's track 6, Left Out. And honestly, the title says it all. The meaning behind Left Out. See, Left Out is clearly a response to the game not being invited to the Pop Out concert. You know, that historic Juneteenth celebration where Kendrick brought out damn near every legendary West Coast artist, where Bloods and Crips are on the stage together, where generations came together, where the culture was celebrated. Yeah, the game wasn't there. And apparently, he's heated about it. So much so that he made an entire song processing his feelings. But instead of being introspective, instead of asking himself why he wasn't invited, instead of maybe looking in the mirror and realizing his own actions pushed people away, instead, he decided to mock Kendrick. And I'm not talking about subliminals. I'm not talking about clever wordplay. I'm talking about the game literally rapping in a high-pitched, nasally voice doing a bad impression of Kendrick Lamar and saying things that are supposed to be from Kendrick's perspective. He says things like, "Album, we don't want to hear it in this voice. More Gen X hit." Then he goes deeper saying, "Who wants either of you guys to win?" Talking about both Kendrick and Drake and claiming he has beef with both of them. Now, I don't know if the game is trying to play the middle or if he's trying to seem above it all or what, but it's confusing because just a few tracks ago, he said he loved Drake. Now he's got beef with him too. Make it make sense. But here's where it gets really petty and really specific. In this fake Kendrick voice, he says, "You follow trends. I'm going with the win. I don't want to hang. My arm is in the rim. What's a Vince Carter to a go?" Okay, let's decode this because there's layers here and they're all disrespectful. "My arm is in the rim" is a reference to Vince Carter's famous dunk contest performance. Iconic moment in basketball history. And then he says, "What's a Vince Carter to a Kobe?" Implying that he's Vince Carter and Kendrick is Kobe. Now here's the problem with that comparison. Kobe Bryant is a top 10 player all time. Multiple championships, Lakers legend, Los Angeles icon. And Kobe had a documented relationship with Kendrick Lamar. They respected each other. Kendrick even references him on Peekaboo from GNX, saying 80 pointers like a Kobe game. So the game is saying he's Vince Carter, who, by the way, is most remembered for playing in Toronto with the Raptors, and trying to say Vince is better than Kobe. Do you see what he did there? He's bigging up Toronto while tearing down LA. He's comparing himself to a Toronto legend while minimizing a Los Angeles legend that Kendrick has a clear ties to. Whether he's doing it consciously or not, he's still showing allegiance to Drake's side while trying to diss his own city's hero. It's honestly sad to watch. You know, this whole situation hits different when you really think about the game's journey, because this isn't just about beef. This isn't just about bars. This is about watching someone who was once great become a cautionary tale. The game's legacy. Let's keep it real for a second. The game was him in the 2000s. The documentary is a classic. Doctor's Advocate showed he could stand on his own without 50 Cent and G-Unit. He was the West Coast torchbearer when the region needed one. He kept the sound alive when a lot of people had written it off. And that's why this is so disappointing. Because the game should be in a position right now where he's celebrated as an OG, where young artists look up to him, where he's passing wisdom down and enjoying his legacy. Instead, he's on a mixtape doing bad Kendrick Lamar impressions and repeating Drake's talking points. That's not growth, that's regression. The jealousy angle. So, why is this happening? What's the real reason the game is moving like this? Let's break it down. Because when you look at the motive, everything starts to click. First, there's the success gap. Kendrick Lamar is on a stadium tour right now. He's performing to sold-out crowds all over the world. He just released GNX, his latest album, and it's dominating. Meanwhile, the game's mixtape barely made a dent on the charts. That kind of contrast stings. Second, there's the respect factor. When hip-hop talks about the greatest West Coast rappers, the conversation usually goes Tupac, Ice Cube, Snoop, Dr. Dre, and then Kendrick Lamar. The game gets mentioned, but he's not in that top tier of the conversation anymore. And that's gotta hurt when you see yourself as a pioneer. Third, and this is the big one, there's the generational shift. See, the game and Kendrick were supposed to be the two torchbearers for 21st century West Coast hip-hop. The game took it in the 2000s, Kendrick took it in the 2010s and beyond. They were supposed to both carry Tupac's legacy forward, Dr. Dre's vision forward, the West Coast culture forward. But only one of them became a global icon. Only one of them is considered one of the greatest rappers alive. Only one of them has the entire culture's respect. And it's not the game. Now, that doesn't mean the game wasn't great. It doesn't erase his contributions. But it does mean he has to accept that someone surpassed him. And clearly, well, he can't. The emotional toll on the culture. But here's the part that really hits different for me. This isn't just about the game embarrassing himself. This affects the entire West Coast hip-hop community. Think about it. The pop-out was a moment of unity. Kendrick brought people together. He celebrated the culture. He honored the legends. He uplifted the new generation. It was beautiful. It was powerful. And it reminded everybody why West Coast hip-hop matters. And here comes the game, tearing that down, creating division, disrespecting the person who's currently holding the region up on his back. It's selfish, it's short-sighted, and it goes against everything hip-hop is supposed to be about. The game was supposed to be a bridge between eras. Instead, he's become a cautionary tale about what happens when ego and jealousy take over. Now, let's zoom out for a second and really examine what this situation represents in the larger hip-hop landscape, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. There's context here that makes the game's actions even more problematic. The Kendrick versus Drake battle context. For anybody who's been living under a rock, earlier this year, Kendrick Lamar and Drake had one of the most intense rap battles in modern hip-hop history. And it wasn't close. Kendrick dropped Euphoria, 616 in LA, Meet the Grams, and Not Like Us. Each one was a precision strike. Each one dismantled Drake piece by piece. Drake tried to fight back with push-ups, tailor-made freestyle, and the Heart Part 6, but none of it landed. The culture sided with Kendrick. The street sided with Kendrick. Even people who weren't Kendrick fans had to admit he won decisively. So after all that, after Kendrick defended West Coast honor and exposed Drake on multiple levels, the game comes out and says he still loves Drake and then uses Drake's conspiracy theories to discredit Kendrick. That's not just picking the wrong side. That's betraying your own region. That's going against the culture's consensus for what? Attention? Relevance? A Drake feature that'll never come? It's embarrassing. And honestly, this isn't new behavior for the game. Let's look at the pattern, because this has been building for years. Remember when he was going at 50 Cent for like a decade straight? When he wouldn't let that beef die, even though it was hurting his own career? Remember when he was constantly name-dropping and trying to insert himself into other people's moments? Remember the Big Boy interview where he lied about trying to sign Kendrick Lamar? Where he tried to rewrite history and make it seem like Kendrick was under him at some point? None of that was true. Kendrick's own team called him out. Producers called him a clown. Bodyguards said he was lying, but the game kept pushing that narrative anyway. So these 5 Kendrick disses on this new mixtape, they're not a surprise. They're the continuation of a pattern. The game has been jealous of Kendrick for a while. He's been watching Kendrick's rise and feeling some type of way about it. And now he's finally saying it out loud. The problem is, nobody's impressed. We're just disappointed. The West Coast response. And speaking of disappointment, let's talk about how the West Coast has responded to all this, because the silence is loud. After the game dropped this mixtape, there hasn't been a wave of support from West Coast artists. There haven't been cosigns from legends. There hasn't been a movement of people saying, yeah, game got a point. Instead, there's been nothing. And in hip-hop, silence is a response. When your own region doesn't back you up, when people who used to rock with you go quiet, that tells you everything you need to know. Ice Cube hasn't said anything. Snoop hasn't said anything. Dr. Dre definitely hasn't said anything. And all of them have shown Kendrick love publicly. They've acknowledged his greatness. They've celebrated his accomplishments. Game is out here trying to tear Kendrick down, and his own coast is like, nah, we're not with that. That's isolation. That's being on an island by yourself. And it's sad to see, because it didn't have to be this way. broader implications, what this means for hip-hop moving forward. All right, so we've broken down the dissets, we've analyzed the motive, we've talked about the emotional toll and the cultural context. Now let's talk about what the situation means for hip-hop moving forward. Because there are lessons here that go beyond just the game and Kendrick Lamar. Lesson 1. Know when your time has passed. Look, every artist has their moment. Every rapper has their era where they're at the top of the mountain. And there's honor in that. There's pride in knowing you had your time and you made the most of it. But there also has to be wisdom in knowing when to step back, when to transition from being the guy to being the OG who supports the new guy. That's growth. That's maturity. That's how legends are made. Think about how Jay-Z moved. He had his reign, and then he stepped into the mogul role. He still raps, but he's not trying to compete with the new generation. He's elevating the culture from a different position. Think about how Nas moves, still dropping quality music, still respected, but not trying to prove he's better than Kendrick or Cole or whoever the current kings are. Contrast. The game didn't do that. Instead of accepting his place in history and enjoying his legacy, he's trying to reclaim something that's gone. And in the process, he's tarnishing the legacy he built. Pause, letting wisdom settle. There's a lesson there for any artist. Know when to evolve, know when to pass the torch with grace instead of trying to snatch it back with jealousy. Lesson 2, loyalty to your region matters. The second lesson is about loyalty. In hip-hop, your region matters, your coast matters, the community that raised you matters. And when you go against that, when you side with people who worked against your own culture, there are consequences. Make it specific. The game is from Compton. Kendrick is from Compton. They should be united. They should be celebrating each other's success. Because when Kendrick wins, the West Coast wins. When Kendrick puts on a show like the Pop Out, that elevates everybody from that region. But instead, the game is out here using Toronto talking points to discredit a Compton legend. He's choosing Drake over Kendrick. He's choosing his ego over his region. And the West Coast is watching, and they're taking notes. And when the time comes for the game to need support, to need cosigns, to need features, where's that support gonna come from? Nowhere. Because loyalty's a two-way street, and the game burned that bridge. Lesson 3. The internet never forgets. The third lesson is about the permanence of the internet age. Everything the game said on this mixtape is documented. Every bar is recorded. Every diss is archived. And it's not going away. 20 years from now, when people study this era of hip-hop, they're going to look back at the game's career and see two distinct parts. The great early years and the bitter decline. And these Kendrick disses are going to be a huge part of that decline narrative. And hip-hop historians are going to write about how the game couldn't handle not being the West Coast king anymore, how he lashed out the person who surpassed him, how he aligned himself with Drake during a battle that the entire culture sided against Drake on. That's going to be his legacy. Not the documentary, not his contributions in the 2000s, but this petty, jealous, declining version of himself. So for any artist listening, any rapper paying attention, be careful what you put out there, because the internet is forever, and your actions today will define your legacy tomorrow. The bigger conversation about ego in hip-hop. And really, when we step all the way back, this situation is a perfect case study on how ego can destroy a career, because that's what this is, really, ego. The game's ego won't let him accept that someone is better than him right now. His ego won't let him celebrate Kendra's success without feeling diminished. His ego won't let him be the veteran who passes wisdom down without needing to prove he can still compete. And look, hip-hop is built on ego to a certain extent. Confidence is necessary, believing you're the best is part of the art form. But there's a difference between healthy confidence and delusional bitterness. Drawing the line. Healthy confidence is J. Cole saying, I'm one of the best, and then backing it up with quality music. Delusional bitterness is the game dissing the actual king because he can't handle not being the king anymore. So, the bigger conversation here is, how do we, as a hip-hop culture, help artists transition through their careers with grace? How do we celebrate the OGs without making them feel irrelevant? How do we make space for legends and the new generation? Because if we don't figure that out, we're going to see more game-type situations, more bitter vats lashing out, or unnecessary beef driven by jealousy instead of competition. 28. So the Kendrick response predictions. All right, so we've covered what the game said, why he said it, and what it means. Now let's talk about the part everybody's really waiting for. How is Kendrick Lamar going to respond? Because make no mistake, a response is coming. The question isn't if, it's when and how. Why Kendrick will respond. First, let's establish why Kendrick has to respond. Some people might say, oh, the game is beneath him. Kendrick should just ignore it. But nah, I don't think that's how this plays out. Reason 1, this is on his own coast. When someone from your region publicly disrespects you, especially someone who was supposed to be an ally, you have to address it. Not for your ego, but for the culture, to draw a line. Reason 2, the game mentioned him 5 times across multiple tracks. This isn't a one-off bar. This is a campaign. This is intentional, and that level of disrespect can't just be ignored. Reason 3, Kendrick just came off a battle where he showed he was willing to defend hip-hop culture. He went at Drake not just for personal beef, but because Drake represented everything wrong with modern rap. Now the game is out here co-signing Drake's narrative? Yeah, Kendrick's not letting that slide. So, the question isn't if, it's how. Prediction 1, a single bar on a feature. The first way I see this playing out is Kendrick dropping a single, devastating bar on our random feature. Like you're listening to a song, maybe it's a collab with Baby Keem or Thundercat or somebody, and then out of nowhere, old heads talking, but they stuck in 2005, said you love Drake, so I know you compromised. West Coast King, but you wasn't on that stage in June. That's what happens when you pick the wrong side too soon.
Something like that. Something that's not a full diss track, but it's clear, it's direct, and it ends the conversation. Because that's all Kendrick needs. One bar. One reminder that the game is beneath him. And it's over. Prediction 2, a surprise single drop. The second way this could go is Kendrick drops a surprise single out of nowhere. No announcement, no rollout, just wakes up one day and drops a track on streaming. Think about how he moved during the Drake battle. Songs were dropping at random times. The energy was unpredictable. The strategy was chaos. He could do the same thing here. Maybe it's not even a full diss track about the game. Maybe it's a West Coast anthem where he's celebrating the culture, bigging up the real ones, and then has a verse where he addresses bitter old heads who can't let go. He doesn't have to name the game directly. We'll all know. And that would hurt worse, honestly, because it's dismissive. It's like, you're not even important enough to get your own diss track. You're just a footnote in a bigger celebration. That would destroy the game's ego more than anything. Prediction 3, the silent treatment with cultural consequences. The third option, and this might be the most savage, is that Kendrick doesn't respond directly at all. He just lets the culture handle it. See, Kendrick has something the game doesn't have anymore. The respect of the entire West Coast. Ice Cube, Snoop, Dr. Dre, all the legends rock with Kendrick. The new generation looks up to Kendrick. The producers, the DJs, the people behind the scenes, they all respect Kendrick. So what if Kendrick just makes a few calls? What if he doesn't say anything publicly, but suddenly the game can't get features from West Coast artists anymore? Can't get booked for West Coast shows. Can't get support from the region. That's exile. That's being removed from the culture without Kendrick ever having to rap a single bar about him. And honestly, that might already be happening. Because, like we said earlier, the silence from the West Coast since this mixtape dropped has been loud. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Let a man destroy himself while you keep winning. What the response will accomplish. Regardless of how Kendrick responds, whether it's a bar, a song, or silence, the outcome is the same. The game loses. He loses because he picked a fight he can't win. He loses because he went against someone who the culture has unanimously crowned. He loses because even if Kendrick doesn't respond, everybody sees the game as petty, bitter, and delusional. This was never a battle. This was a suicide mission. and the game pulled the trigger himself. So where does this leave us? What's the final verdict on the game's 5 Kendrick Lamar diss tracks? And more importantly, what does this do to his legacy? The immediate impact. In the short term, the game has successfully gotten attention. People are talking about him. Videos are being made, like this one. His name is back in the conversation. But it's negative attention. Nobody's saying, yo, game snapped. Nobody's saying he might have a point. The conversation is, why is he doing this? And this is sad to watch. So if his goal was to reclaim respect, he failed. If his goal was to challenge Kendrick's throne, he failed. If his goal was to be seen as a current king of the West Coast, he failed spectacularly. All he did was remind people that he's not where he used to be. And that's tragic. But the real damage is long-term. Because like we talked about earlier, the internet is forever. And in 10, 20, 30 years, when people study this era of hip-hop, this moment is going to define the second half of the game's career. The story is going to be, the game was a West Coast legend in the 2000s who made classic albums and kept the region alive. But then he became bitter, jealous, and out of touch. He couldn't handle Kendrick's rise, so he spent years trying to diminish him, even siding with Drake during the biggest rap battle of the 2010s, going against his own region. By the end, nobody respected him anymore. That's the legacy. Not the documentary, not the torch-passing moment, but this decline. And that's heartbreaking, because it didn't have to be this way. The broader message to artists, zooming out one last time. And really, this whole situation is a message to every artist in hip-hop, hell, in any genre. Your career has stages. Accept them. Embrace them. Don't fight the natural evolution. There's the come-up, where you're hungry and proving yourself. There's the prime, where you're at the top and dominating. There's the veteran stage, where you're still relevant, but you're not the youngest or the hottest. And then there's the legend stage, where you transition to being an elder statesman. The key point. The game tried to skip back from the legend stage to the prime. And you can't do that. Time doesn't work that way. The culture doesn't work that way. So the message is, age gracefully. Support the next generation. Build your legacy through wisdom, not bitterness. Because if you don't, well, you end up like the game. Engagement in closing. All right, y'all, we've gone deep on this one. We broke down all 5 disses track by track. We analyzed the motive, the jealousy, the loyalty issues. We predicted how Kendrick might respond. And we talked about what this means for the game's legacy and for hip-hop culture as a whole. Now, this story is far from over. This is going to keep developing. Kendrick is going to respond in some way. I'm almost certain of it. And when he does, the internet is going to go absolutely crazy. So, here's what I need you to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Kendrick should respond directly, or should he just let the game destroy himself? Do you think the game has any valid points, or is this pure jealousy? And be honest, do you think the game can ever come back from this, or is his legacy permanently damaged? And yo, the comments on my videos are always fire because y'all bring different perspectives. Some of y'all are West Coast natives who have a different view on this. Some of y'all are game fans who might defend him. Some of y'all are Kendrick stans who think this is already over. I want to hear all of it. If you made it this far in the video, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It helps the algorithm push this video to more people, and it lets me know you want more deep dive content like this. We're trying to hit goal number likes on this one, so let's get there. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Because when Kendrick responds, and he will, I'm going to break it down immediately. You're going to want to be here for that. I'm covering every single development in hip-hop right now. Every beef, every album drop, every cultural moment. If you care about rap culture and you want in-depth analysis that goes beyond surface-level takes, this is the channel for you. And
Actually, before you go, I've got another video you need to watch. Right before the game embarrassed himself with these Kendrick disses, there was another situation where Drake got exposed by one of his own supporters. I'm talking about someone who was riding for Drake during the Kendrick battle and then completely switched sides and revealed some wild information. It's one of the most shocking betrayals we've seen in hip-hop this year, and adds even more context to why the game using Drake's talking points is such a bad look. So check out that video next. It's linked on screen and in the description. Before I let you go, I just want to say thank you for rocking with me. These videos take hours to research, script, and edit, and the fact that you're here watching and engaging means everything. Y'all are the reason I can keep doing this. Stay safe out there, stay true to yourself, and remember, in hip-hop and in life, loyalty matters, respect matters, and knowing when to evolve matters. The game forgot all three of those things, and now he's paying the price. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.